Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining this HARP session today. My name is Nahielly Palacios. I'm a lecturer in education at the University of Manchester, and I will be facilitating our session today. Today's topic is Shadows of the Giants, Where to Begin, and Navigating the Maze. Let's meet our international panel. First, joining us is Romana Rafike, Assistant Professor in the Department of English at the University of Dhaka. Romana is SEED alumni from the MA TESOL program, and she's currently in Canada doing a PhD. Next, we have Rui He, Senior Lecturer in Education at the University of Manchester. Finally, we have Ming Chen, also SEED alumnus from the MA DTCE program. Ming is currently doing a PhD at the University of Bristol. Panelists were invited to tell us a story or share their experiences about a challenge or challenges that they have encountered while engaging with research and their academic work. What happened, how they felt, what they did, and what they learned. To kick us off, I'd like to invite Romana Rafike to share her experience with the topic. Romana, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Good morning and afternoon. And thank you, Nahielly, for giving me this opportunity to share my stories. And as Nahielly said, so I've been actually teaching back in Bangladesh for quite some time, but I have recently started my PhD studies, and I feel like it's kind of the similar experiences that I've been going through recently as well. But I think because I had a experience of doing dissertation, that's what I'm going to talk about for my story today. So so much of the experiences I have been I mean, through my master's journey, basically, I have learned lots of things in terms of my, dissertation process, which kind of helping me right now. So the moment specifically want to talk about is something that I'm sure many of you would have encountered so far, the process of selecting our research topic and trying to navigate the literature around it. So I'm specifically referring to my, master's dissertation journey at the University of Manchester, when I was trying to read lots and lots of articles and try to find out one specific topic that would fit my, research interest, but as well as would kind of, in a way, try to contribute to the, literature around the topic. So at the time, I was feeling a strong sense of uncertainty, I'd say, because I was trying to understand the field, because education, I work on educational technology and related to English language teaching and teacher education. And it I would say I was kind of new to the field, so I was trying to understand the field, navigate and identify what has already been said, and somehow try to find and locate a gap in my research. But then this process was really overwhelming, and I would say one specific and constant feeling I had would be the self doubt. So because as much, I mean, as I was reading articles and articles, I felt, I mean, most of the time I felt like I should have known this by now, this particular topic or around this particular area. And because of that thought, I kind of sometimes hesitated to ask questions or clarifications to my professors. And because I assumed that this is something that I should have known, or I should kind of, gather from the all the readings that I've been doing so far. And I also felt like that, or kind of assume that this is the confusion that I should be able to, resolve on my own. And many a times I tried to do that. But then actually that kind of led me to a kind of, confusion and frustrations, because um, I also was kind of asking myself, like, what was the point of reading all these different articles around this different area? Because I could see the arguments, I could see the ideas that the authors were, kind of making, but then it was difficult for me to connect those different ideas and try to find a specific research question around building, around those different ideas. So I would say that's why another challenge in my process was finding the gap in the literature. So I'm sure that this phrase kind of, appears so many. I mean, this is, I think, one of the important part in our literature review that find you are supposed to find a gap. But I was kind of unsure where exactly is the gap and how do I recognize it, because there are so many empirical articles and then there are theoretical articles that we are reading around the topic. But I think some small strategies that really helped me navigating the process, I'd say one of those was keeping a researcher journal. That is something I learned during a course I took at Manchester that was developing researcher competence. Because and from I think from that time, from it was in a second semester course. So from that time, that particular term, I started keeping kind of regular, researcher journal. But I would still say I did try to write lots of reflections on the readings I was doing. But then still, if you just think practically, it doesn't really grow that way. I mean, it's really difficult to be consistent in your writing process because you're reading so many different articles and you can't really write notes on every single articles or reflections because it does take time, it does take a lot of effort. So that's why I would say that it wasn't perfect at the time, and many a times I did not write reflections. So sometimes it could be just one sentence, two sentences. That was in a way sometimes enough for me. But then from that type of writing, I kind of started to read more meaningfully and more purposefully. By that I mean that instead of reading the articles kind of passively, I mean accepting everything that the authors were arguing about, I was trying to kind of see the connections in a way, so that I could kind of argue with the authors of the article. So what so my questions, my strategies behind was that I was trying to find out what the assumptions the authors were making and how does this connect to my other work I have read. And but I would say that that was still such a challenging process and such a, I would say, frustrating experience in that sense, because sometimes you do not know that the argument you are trying to make kind of makes sense, right? And in that way, that time talking to peers really helped me. So talking to my friends, and I think at that time actually Siri was kind of also. So this HARP project was initially known as Share Your Research Ideas, where I was probably one of the early participants, which kind of gave me this idea of the platform for sharing, talking to other students from other educational departments about my research. That really helped me in terms of shaping my ideas around my own topic, because I was receiving all sorts of different types of questions regarding my particular topic. Now, if I look back this whole experience of it, I think this is I mean, for any researcher, this is kind of ongoing process to navigate the literature and then try to find a topic, as I'm trying to do it at this very moment for my doctoral journey as well. I've been reading lots and lots of articles, but then I'm trying to make a more organized systematic way of collecting all those informations and then trying to connect with my own experience so that I do not feel as lost as I was during my master's journey. I would say the one of the key insights from this experience would be the idea of accepting that academic learning really unfolds very slowly. At least for me it did. And building familiarity with a field and learning how to read critically are just part of the process, or identifying where our ideas might fit are all the process that actually require time. So it's not really going to be built over time. And it took me a really lot of time to kind of accept this particular feeling, because I was thinking that it has to be fast forward. But yeah, I think I'm still something that is I'm trying to learn. And the second thing I would say would be developing a scholarly voice, which is again a very much ongoing process, and it's not going to happen all on a sudden. But I think writing and researching, researcher journal, or being able to share my ideas with others, and being challenged about my ideas, and then trying to navigate through the literature again in terms of my ideas kind of helped me eliminate lots of the uncertainties. And that's something that I'm trying to build at this moment as well. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the overall process. And I think I'm very much right on time. So I'll
Yeah,
stop right
pretty
there.
much.
Thank
Well
you.
done. But thank you for sharing, Romana. Definitely, your story makes me think about my own experiences. And that feeling of self-doubt that you mentioned, it does it's resonating in my head. I don't think it's something that goes away, to be honest, from my own experience. Um, I like what you said at the end of, accepting that this is a process that takes time. It's not something that's just gonna magically happen just because you are reading and engaging and writing and doing all these things. It's the idea of developing a scholarly voice happens over time.
To continue our conversation, I'd like to ask Dr. Ray He to share her story on the topic.
Are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nelly, for
Yeah.
inviting me. Really, it was funnily enough that I was telling my students during the session saying like the barrier for engaging in critical reflections would be lack of time. And when you asked me to do this job, I realized that I never managed the time to really engage in critical reflections for myself. So thank you so much for the opportunity. So that just like forced me to take a few minutes to at least think about what I've been like experiencing, what I probably learned from that. So that's another really important reflective, opportunity for me as well. So thank you for inviting me, and also thanks for Romana, if I pronounce your name correctly, you feel sharing. I definitely relate to that, even though I'm being far away from my master's and PhD as well. And I think this kind of self-doubt is nobody can get rid of them really, and it's quite related to what I'm going to share about my gens. Is what I think for myself is the perfectionism and the related imposter syndrome. I use the example I experienced recently. That's for academic writing. I'm trying to finish paper writing recently, and this annoying perfectionism and imposter syndrome is coming back again and become the giant. I'm really trying to fight them. I'm still struggling with them, but hopefully after this session, I get more confidence and helpful reflections to help me get them done. So it's very interesting actually. I think it's happened long ago, over years since I started my PhD and started my career. And one of the work is that you need to keep reading and writing, doing research, and you get publications, and you go work either on your solo writing or you collaborating with colleagues. So writing is something you never get rid of really if you intend to work in academia. And this is somehow different, in my opinion, different from the academic writing and assessment. By the way, I was an international student for a master's and PhD as well. So I felt the academic writing when I become an academic is very different from the assessment, academic writing I got when I was a student, because this kind of like a sense of ownership is very different. You probably write for an essay for submitting for credits. I mean, you would like this work to be recognized and get a good mark, but you don't really, kind of concerned that strongly about this ownership, whether you're making good contributions to the knowledge, whether you're making good sense to your readers. You just have much stronger sense of responsibilities that you would take when you become an academic, so you get something to be published. Probably for PhD students as well, if you're going to publish something. And the interesting thing with myself, with my academic writing, is that I always get stuck in the introduction. I usually feel like I need to get myself in a good status, in a good mood, in a good, kind of like feelings about what I'm going to share. I have a good feeling with my ideas. I have a good feeling with, writing in English. And also, this could be extremely difficult as a non-native English researcher, because I always concerned about how can I, catch in my readers' eyes with English as a second language, and also how can I, get my punchlines very clearly and get into this kind of writing flow, and not just for my readers but also for myself as well. So thinking a lot about this I'll never move on from introduction really. And actually, I'm right now stuck with one of my paper, and I've been stuck for a week already. I didn't move on. I'm still at introduction. I was feeling really terrible with about this for my collaborator, for my co-author about this paper. So that's the thing. That this opportunity just prompted me to think about why am I doing this? Why am I always get stuck with this? Is that really because of I don't know what to write? Is that because I don't have my data? I have no idea of what my data tells me? No, of course not. I know my data well. I know my ideas well. I know exactly what I'm going to argue. But I just think too concerned about a lot of should be less prioritize the things about the language, about the the kind of academic writing thing. I just care about them too much, even over the key ideas I would like to communicate with people and the key messages I would like to share from my research. And also this kind of like sense of perfectionism just make me feel like I should start with one draft and finish there. I would never go back with my drafts and revise them. I just should come with one perfect writing, which of course would be not possible. And then I realized that, well, just trying to jot down even just one sentence or one piece of ideas and then rewrite it again. I can always go back to them and change different words, even just one word or just different, kind of ideas, or at least I finish one paragraph and then go back to it over again. And there's always time to, rework on different things. And that helps. That was really helpful for my last paper. But another interesting thing is when I finish, for example, a paragraph or a section, especially towards the end of the conclusion, I will always feel like I imposted at the conclusion section. I feel like, yeah, I've done a good writing of a paragraph or a piece of work. Was that done by me? I feel like probably being, kind of like imposed by someone else, and they just helped me write, and now they're gone, and I have to be responsible for the words I wrote. I just don't really make sense. What did I wrote, and can I be, make sense to my readers, or should I really publish that, or all the different worries and concerns coming back again, even at that time I finished the paper. So that's something really interesting. I feel like again, this imposter syndrome is related to this perfectionism as well, because I feel like this should be something I should be responsible for. This should be a perfect piece of writing. This should be, make sense to everyone, and this should be done, just perfectly and with standard English. That's something we're interesting just discussed earlier today with some colleagues. And I should follow a perfect logic and, explain different things perfectly. But this again is impossible in doing research. There's no perfect research. That's something I interestingly keep talking about that to my students, but I never, well, it's nothing. I never say that to myself. I did say that a lot to myself, but I struggle with that as well. When you actually get into writing, when you actually get into doing research, you just feel like it could be better, or I can do something, even better. I can do I would like to achieve a perfect work, but this is not possible. So that's something I find really interesting about myself being a non-native English researcher and engaging into this kind of writing things and reading my own work. And I just realized that what I actually should be aware of is this is a process producing something that I'm passionate about, and I've got some really interesting ideas and interesting findings I'm happy to share with people. They shouldn't be perfect, and they're not supposed to be perfect. And this is just a process of thinking through writing, and it's always better being done than being perfect. So that's absolutely something I realized. And yeah, there's just no perfect research or writing. Definitely something. I'll keep reminding myself. I'll probably put a note on my screen and reminding myself. Yeah, so that's something I would like to share with everyone. Even though I've been academics for years, it's still a same struggle I would have. guess Nahielly would agree with me as well. So don't worry if you experience similar things. You'll see your teachers experience this as well. So that's just normal. That's just part of the process and also part of learning experience as well for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing this honest story. I like the giant of perfectionism and the and in the imposter syndrome that you shared, because I hear the contrasts of being stuck, and then the in the introduction, and then being feeling that like an imposter at the conclusion. And I think that, as you said, acknowledging that it is part of the process is important. So thank you for highlighting that aspect, especially when we are in our early stage of our career, or even if we're just engaging in, and doing research because we're doing a master degree, or, it's important to know that, and thank you for sharing that. To continue our conversation, I'd like to invite Ming Cheng to share his story on the topic. Are you ready?
Thank you, Nahielly. Yeah. Uh, and thank you, Dr. Hurray and Rumana, for sharing your stories. And I learned from Dr. He that nothing is perfect. Okay. I'm not sure, like our audience is a master student or doctoral students, but I am going to share my 100% not perfect story, starting 2023. Okay, so when I started my PhD, my biggest problem was not that there was too little literature. It was that there was too much literature, and I did not know where to begin. At that time, I was not even sure what exactly I wanted to focus on. In language learning, I kept asking myself very basic questions. Should I work on listening, speaking, reading, writing, or vocab? Because my direction was not clear, everything I read seemed relevant. But at the same time, nothing felt clear. It really felt like a maze. Maybe it is the topic today, the giant, the shadow, the maze. So another difficulty was that I often felt I did not understand many important concepts. I saw key ideas again and again in the literature, but I still felt unsure about them. Sometimes I even felt that maybe other people understand these concepts already, and I was the only one still trying to understand the basics. So that brought a lot of self-doubt at the very beginning of my PhD. Um, I thought the answer was to read more and more, but later I realized that it is impossible to understand the whole field before starting uh, my own research. A turning point for me came when my supervisor said something very simple. So my supervisors in Bristol told me that squeeze the literature and narrow it down. You At the very beginning, all the PhDs are very ambitious, I would say, but my supervisor kept telling me that narrow something down and don't be so ambitious. You don't want to do anything big and you want to change the world or something like that, because education is about understanding the education. So that advice really stayed with me. I slowly realized that I did not need to understand everything. I only need to focus on the part of the literature that was closely connected to my own study. All right. After that, things became clearer when I started focus on virtual reality, digital content creation, and learner engagement. Okay, so once I had those 2 points, I felt finally had a direction. The literature became more manageable because I could see which studies were central to my research and which were not. Another important change was how I thought about reading literature. At first, I thought I had to find a big research gap. but later I started to think more about research significance. My supervisors once said something that really helped me. Educational research is not a vaccine. It's not like a vaccine for COVID-19 that can help thousands of people all around the world. Again, education is about understanding the learning, teaching, policy, everything, things like that. So what I took from that is that one study does not need to change the whole world. Again, in education, contribution can also mean understanding something more deeply in specific context. For example, studying an idea in a different classroom or with different learners can be meaningful. And I also changed the way I read papers. I used to think I had to fully understand every paper. Like I believe a lot of master students are being like me. So now I think differently. Some papers help me understand concepts, some help me with methods, some help me see how the field is developing. So I ask a simpler question. What can I learn from the paper for my own research? Because different scholars might read one paper and have different understandings from different perspectives. So what can I learn from this paper for my own research? So another thing that helped me a lot was talking to other people. For example, HARP session would be a very great platform for communicating and discussion. Discussions with supervisors, Nahielly, peers can make us realize that confusion is normal and that many things become clearer through conversation, not only through reading alone. I also found it helpful to look at recent call for papers. If you subscribe to some journals or LinkedIn in some scholars' profiles, they usually share this kind of information. If you follow to calls for papers, you can see what topics the field is currently interested in, and sometimes they help see new directions for your research. So looking back now, I think my biggest learning is that feeling lost in the literature does not mean I am failing. It is often part of becoming a researcher. And for me, the real change was not suddenly understanding everything. It was learning how to narrow down, how to read with purpose, and how to accept that uncertainty is part of research. This is my understanding so far during my PhD journey. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that. Ming, you went back to the topic, the first topic of this semester, uncertainty during
Oh,
research. So I'm very glad that you kind of circled back to where we started a few weeks ago. So
is it?
thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for that. We had some
Mhm,
alumni as well from SEED who shared their journey of uncertainty, and I'll share the podcast because there's a podcast now from last session. But that's a powerful story, and sharing how the pressure that you describe, feeling confused, feeling that you had to understand everything, all at once and magically somehow. It's important, as Romana mentioned, everything takes time, and I think accepting that your pace is going to be different from everybody else's pace
mhm.
is important. So that is something I take from your story today.
As we bring this session to a close, I want to express my deep gratitude to the panelists for sharing their stories on the topic. And thank you, all of you, for holding this space with such empathy. Today, we have navigated a complex emotional landscape together, We heard about the information maze and the intimidation of a literature that can feel like a barrier rather than a bridge. We also touched on the heavy weight of perfectionism and the giants of the academic, writing process that can make us feel like imposters. However, we also heard about the powerful shifts that occur, the move from paralysis to a focused spark, the realization that done is better than perfect, and the transition from intimidation to a sense of calm once we accept that not understanding everything at once, that things take time, that learning is a process, is also okay. Once again, thank you for listening to us, for attending this session. It's a goodbye for now.